department. I teach music theory and music psychology, and I play oboe in my spare time too. So those of you who are coming for a recital of sorts, this is a very interesting recital. It's called a lecture recital, and this is a chance for performers to actually get on stage, talk about their research of specific composers, pieces, all sorts of things, and kind of produce a little, informational session while they're doing the music live, which is much different than most presentations that we end up doing in music because we bring recordings in. So it's a great chance for us to kind of show off our performance skills as well as our research skills to an audience. There will be a little question and answer session after each of our performers this evening. Other things I should tell you, there's no real format for the way these happen, so they're also very personal. So each one's going to be very different. And I asked these wonderful people to help me out this evening, so you're going to hear two doctoral students. They're finishing up at the University of Memphis, and they're here on our staff as adjunct applied professors. We're so happy. Thank you guys for helping me out this evening. This is supposedly in conjunction with my performance analysis class on campus, so that's why they are doing this as a model for my class. So here we go. Ready? Great. Have a good time, and welcome our first guest, James Currence.
It's nice to see you guys today. I'm going to get set up right quick. My name is James Currence. I'm the French horn professor here at Rhodes. I want to just kind of get a show of hands, feel out where the audience is. Who has heard of Eugene Bozza? One. We have one. Who has played Eugene Bozza? No, dang. Okay. Well, that's okay. That's totally fine. So the concept of my talk today is understanding through connection. This is a picture of Bozza very late in life. This is going to be towards the early 90s. He passed away in 1991. So why is it important that we study the compositions of Eugene Bozza? At least for wind instrumentalists, his compositional style is wide and varied. He wrote a large number of etudes for most instruments, as well as solo works for all of those instruments. A lot of those solo works end up becoming standards for the repertoire. I know of at least two that exist for horn, one major one for trumpet, several for oboe, a couple for alto sax, and the list goes on and on. He composed, of course, a bunch more, but those are the ones we'll probably be focusing on today. His etudes could be used or expanded upon to help aid the practice and learning of his solo wind repertoire. We'll get more into that in a little bit. Okay, so before we can get into a little bit of his music, I would like to offer a brief biography of our Eugene Bozza. This is a portrait of him, post-divorce, as it's described, unfortunately. Very little is known about Eugene Bozza. There's a lot known about his music because of what he wrote. However, as far as what he did, how he thought, how he acted, not too much. Born in Nice, France, I believe that's how it's pronounced, I'm not French, 1905. He spent about 20 or so-ish years in school and training, got 3 degrees, what are known as Premier Prix, I believe, from the Paris Conservatory in violin, conducting, and composition in that order. Married his first wife in 1924, had his first child, Pierre, the next year. Performed with the orchestra Padelou, 1925 to 1930. So, when we're talking about the idea of him earning the 3 degrees in order, he was a professional violinist first, then he was a professional conductor, then he was a composer. These things don't usually mix too well. The first 5 years are pretty much the only time he's ever a professional violinist. Fun fact, is anyone here familiar with Tombeau de Couperin, Ravel? He was on the premiere of that piece with the Padelou Orchestra. They were the ones who premiered it in 1929, I believe. After that, of course, he wins the Prix de Rome, which is a major composition prize in 1934. Spends a couple of years, 5 or 6, in Rome and Italy, composing. He writes actually a lot of large works here. Writes a lot of choral works. How many are choral students in this audience? Right, show of hands. Are any brass, wind? Wind, very nice. I'm assuming everyone else's composition or something along those lines. He gets banished as a result of the purge after World War II, sent to Valenciennes as a small town. As a director of school there, he worked until about 1975. It's about a period of 25 years. Right after he gets that position, he marries his second wife, Nellie Bond, who was another professor, of course, at the School of Music, and has a second child, Cecile. Cecile ends up becoming a professional harpist. She's still alive today. Most of the research we know about Bozza comes from her and her knowledge of her father. Writes most of his solo works between 1950 and 1975, not easy dates. Some stuff's composed earlier, some stuff's composed later. and dies in Valenciennes in 1991. All right, now for the meat and potatoes of our thing on Ireland. Who can guess what this one means?
It's the French word for Ireland.
Yes, exactly, which is why I grabbed a picture of a cathedral in the Irish countryside. Composed in 1951. We're going to get into a little bit of an analysis of this piece. How many students in here are forms and analysis people? One. Okay, cool. So for the rest of us, hang on tight. We're going to get to this nice and easy. So if you would like to think of most of Bozza's music, it tends to be a series of vignettes rather than a strict form that we might see in something, say, like a sonata form, where you might have a very clear exposition followed by development, followed by recapitulation. Sometimes that happens in Bozza's works, sometimes it doesn't. And it's kind of here or there when it happens. My job here, I'm going to go ahead and perform a little bit of this to you. The piano is not super important in this piece. But I'll go ahead and just start it out. This is the first theme for horn with piano. This is A, and I'll follow quickly by theme B. I'll skip a little bit. Nice. So those are the first two things. Thank you, I appreciate that. You can think of this as kind of an exposition, super simple, pretty much as basic as you can get. All right, afterwards, it kind of jumps. Really fast-paced tempo, it's almost the exact same melody, but now you can think of us like we're on a horse. To give you guys a clarification, when you see these kind of styles and patterns, as far as the rhythmic goes, this is supposed to give the idea of a hunt, right? So a hunt, if you think, go back 1800s, early 1800s, you have a bunch of, well-to-do people. They're looking for things to do with their time. What do? They go out and hunt things. And what do? They bring along their horn player friend, who usually holds the horn something like this, rides on horseback, excuse my hands, and he'll usually do out some calls, like saying, oh, the foxes are over there. And it's along those lines. That's a hunt. This is a very common idea in a lot of French music. You'll see this over and over again. And the idea is it's characterized by a bouncy 6/8 time signature and a dotted 8th rhythm. Dun, 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 dun. If any of you are familiar with Beethoven's 7th Symphony, big thing in that symphony, all over the place, all over the first and the fourth movement. Okay. I'm actually going to go ahead and perform this part, just for funsies. Now going into it, this follows by a cadential section. And that leads us into our next section. But before I can talk about that, I kind of want to talk about what makes Bozza's music interesting. Because it's a one thing to look at a composer and say, oh, I really love his music. It makes me feel impassioned. I love this. It's another to say, okay, we can look a little bit deeper and find what's underneath the surface. So, I'm not even going to ask you guys, do you know what adoptive transcription is? No. Okay, so this is a term coined by a doctorate for her dissertation, Dr. Liu of University of North Texas. She published a paper, this was more on selective works of clarinet, and she figured out that essentially there's a bunch of small melodies across Bozza's music that you can take almost copy-paste and put them in other pieces of music, and that's what happens. You can look through it. It kind of almost is like a little Rubik's Cube. So you take that cadential thing that I just played, that's over on the right side there. Right? itself. But you saw in the fourth line, carbon copy. It's almost the exact same motive. But he'll do that in a variety of his other pieces as well. Okay, going back over here. All right, to show you more about this is a different piece. This is number 15 of a series of 18 etudes that he wrote for improvisational study for French horn, innocuous, seemingly harmless. So you got the idea of this is the etude that I would play because it's made for French horn. But of course I was doing my research. No, you're not. There we go. So that's what I mean, is that you'll take like an etude for a horn thing, written completely at a different time for a different purpose. Then you have Chanson à Bercera, which is a solo piece that for alto saxophone and piano. Carbon copy, same thing. Is it almost as if the composer hit CP or Control C, copy, paste into one of the other things. But this was back during the 40s and 50s, of course, when all you had to do was take what you did before and then maybe apply it elsewhere. Am I suggesting that he copy pasted his music? I don't think so. I think it's more on the interesting side of things. Here's another instance. So this one from the top, from number 6 of those etudes I was talking about. Woo, don't go too fast. All right. Right. Bottom one, not the same piece. This is from En Forêt, which is a horn and piano piece that is a standard in our repertoire. And it's the exact same thing, but they're written at different times. Here's another one, yet more adopted transcription. This stuff appears all over the place. This one's a little bit dicier, gonna be honest with you. You have the evidence of triplet patterns here, no triplets down here. However, the same through line that it ends with is almost the exact same as it is with here, even with bum, 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 bum. Pretty similar, right? This actually will get us back into our analysis. So after that whole cadential, well, it's not even after, the next part is a cadential section. At which point the horn largely does a lot of things on his own, not too much going on for the piano. Basically how that segues into the next part of the piece. You can think of this section as a development section if we're sticking to that format of exposition, development, recapitulation. This one's a little dicey. I wouldn't call this the development. This is kind of something new. This is not something that's derivative of something before. Okay? This is the next part of it. We're getting pretty close to the end. We got a couple more things to get through. So this is the adjective section. This is the hardest part for me to pinpoint anywhere. This doesn't really show up anywhere else. The closest thing I could find was etude number 18 from those ones for horn. Even still, it's not exactly a carbon copy. But for our purposes, I'll just play the Angelus part. Think of a cathedral on an Irish countryside being viewed by a distant French composer on the other side of the channel. You see in very small words, S-O-U-R-E, means something slightly different. play necessarily the second part of that etude just because of how distant it is. But you obviously see the very easy lines swelling through here. It's not exactly a good matchup. It's the closest thing I can find now. This is the one that's kind of the not exactly fit well within the frame. All right, and this is our end. Measures 96 to 126, known as a dance. You might think of a classic Irish jig for this one. That's essentially what this is. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That's very kind of y'all. So that's on Ireland. You can imagine pretty clear recapitulation. So this is kind of where I would like to drop off, essentially. So this is a lot of precursor research that will go into a further topic that I will talk about. Essentially, I will record essentially his 6 works for horn. He's written 5. There's also that suite for 4 horns that we heard. My intention is eventually to record all of these as well as his etudes. Currently, there are no recordings of his etudes, and sadly, for a lot of the choral work for our choral friends in here, not really a whole lot of recordings. It's very sad because apparently he won a lot of awards, which is very sad to hear. My intention is to kind of find and document that connection, those ideas in different pieces. Some people have already started to work on this. There is the thematic index of the work by Bozza. This is by Dr. Quipper Rushing of, I believe, LSU. But that's pretty much where I'm going to drop it off. Does anyone have any questions?
Questions? Anyone?
I don't imagine too many. If they don't. Yes.
Do we know of anything about his life and association with Nadia Boulanger at all? And his years line up and his location lines up?
They do. I believe he either taught or studied around the same time as her when her father was teaching at the Paris Conservatory.
Sounds about right.
Yep.
Thank
But
you.
as far as like his interactions with Nadia, I don't know. I'm not too sure about that one.
Other questions? I was gonna say, I'm gonna be bold and ask.
No,
So
you're
have you
more than
done
welcome to.
any, I think about this a lot, like Poulenc, who's also a French composer. And when I listen to Poulenc's works, it's like I hear specific like tropes that he's using in all of his different works. Is it similar? Do you think you can be able to draw a connection across 20th century French composers?
I think so. There's gonna be like a cutoff point. There's because somewhere around the mid '60s, early '70s, he switches from a very tonal idea to something way more atonal. He starts writing his etudes, the graphisme etudes that you'll find for a variety of different instruments. Kind of help codify a lot of the extended techniques for those instruments. And so his compositional style changes completely. And so those connections are still there. They just kind of morph and become these weird things that you wouldn't see any of them in say like on Erlen or that Chanson à Berceur piece. But you might see them in other pieces, say like his Entretien piece, that's for French horn, written around 1971. Or you'll see, actually, believe it or not, you'll see some of these other ideas in some of his later pieces, like Sur le Cime for horn and piano. But I think there's that idea that like the melodies will find themselves in different parts. I don't know if it's as direct as Poulenc though.
Got it. Other questions? I'm gonna ask the audience a question. How many of you have ever seen a French horn live up close? A few of you? Do you mind doing some demo on French horn?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was gonna say, because you played a bunch of different styles at the stop versus
I did,
not,
yes.
and I would bet most of them don't know anything about that.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you go in and use your hand, we use our hand for pitch, you'll just have the classic horn sound. Right. If you stick your hand all the way inside, we have what's called stopped horn, which is that song cuivre image that we saw. It's weird though for me because if you think I'm playing like an F, G, A, B, flat, C, if I play it stopped, I have to transpose and think of everything down a half step. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B. Right? So that's the stop sound. Another thing we use is our lovely mutes. This is a variation of a straight mute, and it gives kind of a din kind of sound. It's not my favorite mute, but it's a good one. Yeah. So there's several different kinds of mutes. You'll see a metal one that's a just stop mute, does the same thing as your hand. But there's other ones that you'll see. You might see one that's a straight side on this one. There's even one I've seen that's like a metal one that goes out like this and it curves. That's just for like 2 specific pieces. That's like a $350 mute that you're really going to use for Chite 6, and that's about it. So every now and then you'll see some weird stuff, but that's pretty much what we use. Yeah.
Anyone have more questions about the French horn? There's something I was going to ask him.
My favorite film is Star Wars.
Oh, there you go.
For soundtrack for the French.
I was going to say Star Wars, favorite soundtrack for horn.
Yep.
Other
Absolutely.
things?
Believe it or not, John Williams actually got some of his ideas from Bozza too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Other things? Geez, James, there was one other thing I was going to ask you.
No worries.
I can't remember what it was.
It's okay.
We're good?
Sounds good.
Good? We're going to have a little break. Little stage resets, and then we'll be back in about 5 minutes. That's good. Oh, plenty.
Excellent.
We're taking our time.
Yes. Dr. Benford should be here
We'll be here shortly. We'll be fine.
in a few minutes.
Like I said, it's the sets. It's always-
It will. You're like, show me your